welcome to a whole new season of Awkward Sibling Hour. We have a wild, fun season planned for you, but for today, we are going to start off with something super fun. What we like to call, you might be neurodivergent if. Now, if you are old enough, and I realize that many of you are not old enough, but if you are old enough, you will remember Jess Foxworthy's wildly popular, you might be a redneck if.
Yeah.
And Tom and I grew up with that. We, as little kids, yes, I said little. As little kids, we used to listen to his stand-up CDs and giggle and laugh and point fingers at each other and the rest of our family during his You Might Be a Redneck If segments. And it just sort of stuck with us. So here we are today with You Might Be Neurodivergent If. Does it mean you're definitely neurodivergent? No, we are not here to diagnose you. We are not here to ruin our good time either. We are just teasing and talking, but we have all noticed certain, what is the word? Similarities of, like, why is everyone in my family like this? And yet everyone in my family is neurodivergent. So you might be neurodivergent if you do this too. Everybody can jump in and list the things that they maybe have noticed about themselves and their family and friends who they know are neurodivergent, or even just who they suspect. It's all in good fun. It is not meant to hurt anybody's feelings. If you feel roasted, you know why you feel roasted.
So what's the difference?
Without further ado, look at all these amazing people who are here and have been certified.
I got the paper. It's on the wall.
Me too, baby. Me too. I feel like if you have a bachelor's degree, you've been certified. Like, you've been certified batshit, but still it counts. Nobody gets their bachelor's totally sane. No one.
No one.
I will die on this hill.
I really felt like when I was a kid that Jeff Foxworthy knew my dad and brother because it felt like every joke was specifically about them.
Oh, the one of if your family travels with paper bags and garbage bags, you might be a redneck. And it was just like, oh my God, we literally do that.
Yeah.
Hello, Maggie. Congrats, Charlie.
Actually, I'll take that because I did get my other certification finished. So.
Hi, Phoebe. Hi, Kat. It's just like I saw you recently. Hey, Megan. Hey, Spence and all the little Spency babies. And not so babies. Some of the big Spence boys. So as I said, everybody is welcome to jump in and do theirs, and you don't have to do the startup. You might be neurodivergent if, although of course we love it because it's fun.
You can always just do the ellipse at the beginning.
Yes, that's the shorthand. Anyway, where do you want to go with this? Yes, he is a hearty Spence boy. I agree.
I don't know if this actually counts, but just to go after everybody all at once, I feel like the more neurodivergent people I meet, we all have one thing in common. If you've ever finished a really big fiction book in one night, you might be neurodivergent.
Megan says you might be neurodivergent if you send your friends articles to read because you care about them. Yes. So, Tom, how do you want to start?
I'm not entirely sure. Unfortunately, I'm still a bit tired.
Okay.
Wait, were we supposed to have rested before this?
You know, it's something that we try to do every day just for good habits and health hygiene, but no promises made.
But one of the things I also wanted to bring up of what this particular episode and show is about is, so we know neurodivergence is highly associated with genetics and family. So it's not always easy to tell because, hey, you grew up in this family and they all did this. Doesn't, everyone leave their keys in, the fridge every month? Or, or just in the door when they came inside? Isn't that like just the last thing you do at night is go double check the front door and remove the keys that you left there? I just wanted to do a bunch of these. Here's things that you may not realize is different. Is, actual signs of, neurodivergence. Even though, yes, I'm sure your defense is correct of all of your family does this. Every single one of them, going back aunts and uncles even. And it's because we said, like, if you're neurodivergent, you tend to hang around more neurodivergent people because of similarities. And often neurotypical people find these habits and behaviors more annoying and more confusing. So, and then I just wanted to have fun with it. So yes, I do have a spreadsheet of a ridiculous number of jokes.
So can we go over what's the difference between neurodivergence and mental disorder?
Okay. So neurodivergent has to do with specifically a person at a young developmental age, their neurology developed differently. That is neurodivergent. Versus if somebody, say, experienced an injury as an adult, their neurology did not develop differently. They developed, in theory, in a neurotypical manner, and then they had an injury or an accident in adulthood after their neurology was finished developing.
So, like, one I always think of as an okay example to show the difference is if you get low mood or depression, and you've got a family history, and there's a good chance this is probably neurodivergence of your brain is structured differently, which is what tends to cause the depression. Versus if you are in an accident, you have major surgery, or even you have a baby. There is, postpartum depression. This is known. You have postpartum depression, post-surgical depression. These are known effects on the body. It has nothing to do with the way your brain is structured. It is the body's reaction, and it will go away on its own, although they will give you medication now because no one needs to deal with that. But that is not anything to do with how your brain is formed.
So, for instance, and I actually just checked last night about what does the medical community now consider neurodivergent, because this is still a growing field, because technology is just now at the point where we can really start studying people in infancy, childhood, and so on to see what is developmentally affected and what is not. So under what we call mental health or mental illness, there are certain diagnoses that are actually part of under the neurodivergent umbrella, and some that are not necessarily, but can be. So for instance, bipolar disorder is a neurodivergent. It develops in childhood. Specifically, actually, we are now seeing it developing. We now are knowing it is developing more in toddlerhood. So there is a change from the neurotypical neurology development in early childhood that is different, and that is part of what is now called bipolar disorder. Versus straight, regular old depression diagnosis is not necessarily neurodivergent. However, they are now saying that chronic depression, where a person has bouts of depression that maybe last months or years, and then they are not depressed, and then they get depressed again. So essentially, a chronic depression diagnosis can in fact turn out to be neurodivergent. That their neurology developed differently, again, in childhood, and this is what is leading to chronic depression diagnosis.
Also, I want to answer real quick, because Laura and I have talked about this before. OCD, Maggie's correct. OCD is not always neurodivergent. It can be because of how somebody's brain developed in childhood, but it can also be because of, we now know, certain environmental factors, including chemicals and certain diseases, will also cause OCD behaviors in your brain. That those ones, if you get them the right medication, can actually be cured. Among other OCD known, causing diseases is what's the one the cats bring us?
Toxoplasmosis.
Yes.
So again, toxoplasmosis in and of itself, a diagnosis in adulthood, is not necessarily neurodivergent. However, a toxoplasmosis exposure in childhood can in fact affect the neurological development of that child and therefore cause them to become neurodivergent. So we're really talking about what is the cause and when how did that cause affect that person at what age? And so that is what neurodivergent is versus non-neurodivergent, neurotypical. You can be depressed and be neurotypical. They are fighting it out after a medically retired soldier was called neurodivergent on the news.
And again, that is...
It has to do with causation.
Yeah.
Something that we know humans are not very good at. Correlation versus causation.
Yeah, neurodivergent means that from early childhood, your brain took a different direction in how it developed. And so it has never known anything different. Versus head trauma as an adult is different.
Versus head trauma as a child can in fact cause a person to be neurodivergent because their neurology had to develop differently around a serious head injury.
And so, yeah, that's where all the confusion comes in.
But here, we're not here to exclude people. We don't care. If you don't want to be considered neurodivergent, then don't consider yourself. You live your life. We don't care. You live it. I'm going to live my life. You're going to live your life. We're all going to have to live our lives. It's cool. But again, one of the reasons we wanted to make these, talk about these similarities and these jokes is because growing up as somebody who has always been ADHD, I was told that so much about how I am was either rude or lazy. Two things I do not intentionally ever try to be. And so, yes, we are trying to poke fun at all of these ableist ideas, these misconceptions, because our society has a lot of problems. And that includes these toxic ableist views. It hurts me now to watch some old shows and here they are describing a character who very clearly has ADHD, and they are describing them as lazy or who just refuses to focus versus they can't focus. They want to, they just can't pull it together to get their assignments done on time. It genuinely wounds me because I heard the same thing growing up. I heard the same thing even in my 20s. And frankly, I've actually heard it still going on because people are still running these old tapes. It's like, welcome to, hi, you have ADHD. You're not a bad person. ADHD does not affect the quality of your character. So, how about we get to some funs?
Sounds good.
So, this all started about, 2 years ago when I was doing deliveries with Tom. And Tom pulls up in one of the swankiest neighborhoods in our city to do a delivery. And he comes back in. He's like, and I said, because I was looking at the car that was parked right outside the driveway. It was in the driveway. It was not in the garage. And I was looking at a signature dent. When I say signature dent, I mean, I know this dent because Mom, every car she ever had this exact middle dent. You know where it kind of bends the license plate a little bit? Just a little bit. And there's a very distinctive dent in the trunk too, not so that it affects its ability to lock, but it's just there. There's a little scrape. The paint is not on there, and the bumper is dented ever so slightly. And I was like, you might be neurodivergent if your neighborhood knows you as the mailbox killer. And Tom's like, they're one of my best customers. He always tips well. And I'm like, cool. But still, he's a mailbox killer. I know that dent. Mom has killed so many mailboxes in her life garage sailing. Every car this woman ever owned, y'all. Every single car had one, if not multiple, of these very distinctive top of the trunk matching down to the bumper dents. And that's where it started. I was like, we should probably make a joke list of you might be neurodivergent if your family seems to be physically incapable of leaving a kitchen with all the cabinet doors closed. And Tom's like, yeah, set up a group and start putting those in there. And that's what we've been doing for a couple years. Is you might be neurodivergent if your family's idea of correspondence is to just mail newspaper clippings to each other with highlighted sections, with the expectation of you will read this as homework before you see them next to discuss it.
Roy is just winding up a storm. Oh my gosh.
Because you stopped cuddling with him.
Oh, now you're quiet. Thank you.
I mean, here's a classic one. Go ahead, Gloria.
You might be neurodivergent if you have a short-term memory like a leaky cauldron.
You just came right for me on that.
Yeah, yes, you did. You might be neurodivergent if all your stuff looks like a catastrophe. It's actually very well organized.
I mean, and one of the reasons for that is, and part of the reason why ADHD has been rolled into autism is one of the hallmarks of being neurodivergent is that parts of your brain develop at different speeds and paces than the neurotypical pattern. So you may be a prodigy with instruments, but you still haven't learned to tie your shoes at 25. Poor baby.
Look at this starving baby. Oh, the nose. Look at me, man.
But because it's not because people way back, my father, grandfather, and great grandfather, it was noted, were all what's a term I can use now? As children, we're all diagnosed as being simple-minded.
They tried to institutionalize our father when he was a child.
And his father. And his father. By the time they were in their 20s, they were all considered exceptionally intelligent. And this is one of the common signs of neurodivergence, of where you have difficulties, your brain literally just develops at different rates than normal, And so you seem behind and have major learning disabilities, but at the same time, you can learn other things very quickly. And a lot of it is down to dopamine production and a bit of brain chemistry and structures, and just when does it come online? So like, while I seem, for the most part, reasonably functional now, when I was, under 10, oh yeah, no, there was no question just how neurodivergent and special needs I was. Every teacher commented on this. But the brain structures do keep growing and eventually come online and function just like, neurotypicals get, just at a later age.
I couldn't read until I was 9 years old, and I did not successfully learn to tie my shoes by myself till I was 7. But I was also balancing our family budget and check register when I was 6. All in the same. That we developed differently. My math skills, my ability to handle numbers developed much faster than my ability to recognize letters and to form them into words that I could then master myself. So it's just one of those. But anyhow, Tom, did you want to read any of the file you've been working on of You Might Be Neurodivergent?
Sure. Should I read a few?
Sure.
Let's see. If you have more than 4 universal remotes and none of them are in the right room.
In our family, our father had a rule: the remote does not leave the room it belongs in on pain of death. There's a reason our family needed this rule.
If you've ever been more interested in the patterns and textures of fabric than finding clothing you can wear while shopping.
Hey, now.
Yes.
If you use your hide a key at least once a month. If you lock yourself out of the house, even though you have a hide a key because you forgot to replace the key last time.
Okay, now, look. There's a good reason for that. I have the ADHD and I forget.
Welcome to neurodivergence.
The worst thing that ever happened. So when we first moved into this house, before we changed the lock on the front door, if you closed it a little too soft or a little too hard, it would just automatically lock. It had the worst, most janky lock in the world in it. So I would get locked out of the house a lot. And I forgot to put our spare key back out, and so I ran up to my parents' house to get the key I left with them, and they couldn't find it because they misplaced it too. So that was fun.
Also, I figured later on I would probably turn a bunch of these into little bits and shorts.
I want to do number 7.
Well, if you do 7, you have to do, the following as well.
Okay. You might be neurodivergent if you've ever tried to price a DNA synthesizer so you can create a dinosaur just to pet it.
Hey, now.
Which leads to you might be neurodivergent if you refer to your chickens as your flock of trained velociraptors. Look at that. We came for Charlie and Maggie all at once.
Why else would you have chickens?
I mean, I agree. Why else would you have chickens?
And then as well, if you named all your chickens basic color names.
My chicken's name was Cimmeril.
Mm-hmm. And then if you keep a sign next to the chicken pen with the number of days since your chicken blue last tried to kill you.
Chickens are evil, man.
They are. They are dinosaurs.
They're a sweet, precious kind of evil, but they no matter how small that chicken is or how big you are as a person, they look at you as prey. And they will never stop.
You might be losing your mind if you become convinced that Blue has organized all the flock into 3 attack wings and you're sure are planning to flank and jump you the next time you feed them.
I'm pretty sure that actually happened with my grandma's chickens.
You'll find peace of mind, though, by accepting you need to find a different hobby. I mean, but this is how neurodivergents do their hobbies. Of we don't do it lightly. We don't do it, in a very basic form. We get very nuanced and involved.
I have never made a conlang just because I got obsessed with one little part of grammar.
Never.
No,
Never.
never. Why would I ever do that?
Note, Maggie is the leader of her chickens.
If they ever Jurassic Park the world, I'm heading straight for Maggie's because I'm pretty sure she'll be able to do that like Chris Pratt hand thing and make all the dinosaurs just stop.
Oh yeah.
All right, I have questions. Is this like easily led astray, or like you just actually follow the line? I have questions.
I follow it as just follow the line because I've ended up at the wrong movie before because I just followed the line and then was like, well, I'm here now, and watched it anyway. I've ended up in a lot of accidental places because lines.
I used to find my mother in all sorts of queues. I'm like, what are you here waiting for? Like, literally, we'd be at the mall or something, and I'd be looking for her. And I eventually learned by the time I was like in upper elementary school to just start looking for queues. Because my mother would be in a random one. I'm like, what are you waiting in line for here? She's like, I don't know. I figured everyone else was here, so it must be good. And it's like, Mom, don't get in lines you don't know what they lead to. For all you know, you're selling your soul. You're waiting in line to sell your soul.
Yeah, but then at least you get to meet the devil, and that'd be really cool.
So Mom had something like that to say. I'm fine. Vanilla is a delicious ice cream. Also, it goes with so much. But I agree with Maggie. You might be neurodivergent if you say thank you to AIs. I agree. I always say thank you and please.
Yeah.
When you are distressed and maybe cry because inanimate objects are destroyed and it's hurting them.
Yes.
Yes. It's like, stop her. Don't kick that robot. Stop it. I will lose my shit.
If you have hyper empathy.
Yes. Well, how about this? Like, it's one thing two people argue and I'm like, okay. It's another thing if somebody is yelling at a robot, it's like, quit it. Roomba's doing its best. It's not its fault that it doesn't have arms or legs or any way to unstuck itself from the sofa.
I would say so, CB.
Yeah, I would say any of those kind of things, robotic conversationalists.
I would also say if you've ever been able to actually hold a conversation with it, because at least the Echo has a conversation mode you can put it into where you can say, let's talk about this topic. If you've been able to successfully have a conversation with one, you're probably neurodivergent because it talks like me and my ADHD friends because it just flows from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, but sometimes actually circles back to the original thing that you were talking about initially. Yeah, Maggie.
Let's see. Number 13. You might be neurodivergent if you've ever been accused of having a brain like a computer, but it's got a million open tabs.
Is the subset of that one is when if everybody says you're so smart and you feel like the biggest dummy on earth?
Yes. Can relate.
I'm not smart. I am well researched. There's a difference.
So number 14, what Tom has written is you might be neurodivergent if your friends know that when you say, I'll be there in 5 minutes, you actually mean, call me in 10 minutes in case I get distracted. And I'm like, more like 20 minutes. It's like, oh, I'll be there within an hour. That's what I'll be there in 5 minutes means.
I'm the person that shows up right on time or like 5 minutes early.
Yeah, but we know where your family.
We know how early you had to leave to get there on time.
I overestimate how long it'll take to get there just in case the bus doesn't come and I have to wait for the next bus.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I host a dinner party and people are like an hour late, like, the food's cold now, yo! Like,
oh, I know. It's so hard.
Inconsiderate, and it drives me up the wall.
Well, I mean, there's real friendship though when you know your friends, so you learn what time to tell them it starts based on how late they will be.
Respect me enough to know.
You might be neurodivergent if you say they should respect me enough to know, because I feel like everyone I know says that.
If they really cared, they would know to set an alarm or something.
How about you might be neurodivergent if you've ever spent hours researching the perfect font or cover image for a project, only to realize you forgot to start the actual project itself.
Okay,
Do you all need to get your teddy now and hold it to you?
So I opened Substack the other day because I was going to work on an essay and noticed in notes a thing from a typographer. And they were like, what do you think of this font I'm working on? And I started talking to them, and we ended up going off into another messaging app just to talk to each other about different types of like things you could do with lines to make fonts work well. And I spent all day talking to them about typography and never worked on my essay. I think that's a subset of that.
So I would like to bring up something that I have found out in the last couple years. It turns out there have been unofficial, informal surveys of actors in Hollywood, both TV, movies, you name it. And so far, no one has escaped being diagnosed with ADHD. That apparently you are not comfortable being in front of a live studio audience, a stage audience, or knowing people will watch you later unless you're neurodivergent. And more specifically, it tends to be ADHD. Same with performing musicians, which are different from what is the studio musicians, I guess it's called, right?
Session musicians.
Session musicians, yes. Apparently not 100% of session musicians are diagnosed with ADHD, but apparently like 110%, which that was a joke that I heard. 110% of performing musicians, however, apparently have all been diagnosed with ADHD. So you name it. The Rolling Stones, they have all been diagnosed. Everybody in John Bon Jovi has been diagnosed, apparently. They just don't necessarily come out publicly with it, because prejudice is as prejudice does.
But also, yes, a lot of the writers are very neurodivergent, so the characters they write tend to be.
Mm-hmm.
Hence, yeah, Monica from Friends, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But I feel like 110% is actually a low estimate, because have you met drummers?
Yes.
Like drummers are like 200, 300% ADHD.
I heard a story about, which drummer was it? There was a drummer. Was it one of the drummers for Foo Fighters? It was a Gen X drummer. So this was like going around in the early 2000s of like, hey, all drummers have ADHD. And there was one, he's like, I'm not like the rest of you, so I must not have it. And 20 different drummers contacted him and said, you should totally get checked before you say that, buddy. So yeah, he was in Seattle. So it must have been like one of the ones for Foo Fighters or something else. Anyway, so he goes to a specialist to prove he's not diagnosed or he's not diagnosable with ADHD. Not only did he get diagnosed, but every single one of his children got diagnosed with ADHD.
I'll say, isn't he the one?
It turns out I was just the quiet ADHDer.
I want to say, didn't he get diagnosed before he showed up because he had to redo the meeting 3 times because he kept forgetting?
Yes.
Including one time driving to the office but forgot to get out of the car.
Yep.
I really do feel like if you are a drummer, you might be neurodivergent, because I used to do a lot of music press, and so I know quite a few musicians, and drummers have a special kind of hyper ADHD that's like regular ADHD but turned up to 11.
Yeah. So apparently, if you are even just decent at drumming, you practically are diagnosed already. I find that kind of amusing. I say that as somebody who absolutely loved my time playing trombone and recorder and piano. I loved it. I still wish to get back to it. But yeah, I've never experienced a problem performing or speaking in front of a live audience. I know other people who literally do vomit before they take a microphone, and that is not something I experience. And then to read about, it turns out that's actually a symptom of ADHD, of you are fine being in front of anywhere between 5 and 2,000 strangers, and it's nothing to you because you're like, I don't even know them. Who cares? That is apparently a low-key symptom of ADHD, is to not have any qualms about performing in front of strangers, which I didn't even know about. I was already diagnosed for over a decade when I came across that. But then looking back, I was like, hold up. My psychologist asked me about, do you have any qualms performing or speaking in front of audiences? And it's like, oh, sure, I get a little nervous, especially if I have a rehearsed speech I need to give. Like, I'm more afraid I'll forget parts of it or skip over parts. That's what I get nervous about. But he asked me, but what about like the fact that there's like a whole audience, there's all these people, eyes watching. I'm like, all the eyes are on me. Nobody's talking to each other. It's great. And he's like, okay. And I was like, is there some kind of significance? He's like, no. It just went on with his questionnaire. But apparently, yeah, that is a thing. Like, that is specifically a thing about ADHD, which is not to say that everybody diagnosed with ADHD is fine in front of an audience. That's not to say that, because we all have our qualms and our issues and our nervousness or anxiety. It's just apparently neurotypicals all have serious fear factor about speaking in front of strangers, and ADHD people simply, for the most part, are not half as likely to experience that, which I did not even know.
I'm terrified of talking in front of groups of people until you actually put me in front of them.
Oh God.
All of that anticipation up to the moment.
Yeah, I'll be nervous, and then you hand me the microphone, and I swear my mom even noticed when she was like, literally your shoulders just relax and you're like, okay, hey everybody. And it's like, yeah, it's like all eyes are on me, and I finally relaxed because I'm not worried that people are doing things off in the corner and then they're going to show up with pitchforks and torches. But again, that is not normal. That you hand me a mic and it's like, finally, my place.
So here is, I can actually tell you the reason on this one, and it is very much shows what is neurodivergence, and why is this, what makes it so notable. So one of the things about the real difference between being neurotypical growing up and neurodivergent is everyone who's neurodivergent very quickly learned growing up that they thought differently than everyone else. There was never a very big confusion about, hey, we all had the same thought. That doesn't happen much with neurodivergence, except for, occasionally you meet another neurodivergent who's similar and you're like, you're my best friend now. Neurotypicals, for the most part, growing up, will have everyone around them has very similar thoughts, very similar behaviors, very similar plans. And so their theory of mind is whatever I'm thinking, they are thinking as well, because that's what's been reinforced, is my behaviors are just like theirs. Theirs are just like mine. So obviously we think similar. Isn't that everyone? And so they are not as nervous about being around others because whatever they're thinking, but that does create that problem where whatever negative thoughts they have get multiplied by the crowd they are around. So if they're in a crowd of 10, 20 people, they see a crowd of 20 other versions of their own mind, noticing all their own mistakes and flaws, everything they do. And that's what makes them so nervous and nauseous. Versus neurodivergent, we know none of them notice any of the things we're noticing. So once we're actually in front of the group, it's like, what am I worrying about them? I'm just worrying about my own performance. And so you can just get to the dopamine rush of validation of, are they giving me the responses I want or not? But your brain isn't telling you, oh, they notice all your little mistakes that you notice.
I mean, I do really love it when I'm in front of an audience and I can get that first laugh out of them. It just absolutely, it means I have the crowd. It means they are paying attention to what I'm saying and that I can control the crowd, and I love it. Like, it just absolutely relaxes me. But yeah, before that, I do this thing where I shake my hands to try to get out the nervousness. Like, they're going to shake anyway, so I do it on purpose. And it helps distract me from the adrenaline before.
Also, Maggie, the latest DSM has actually rolled ADHD into autism because they are all dealing with the same issues.
Mm-hmm. They've been talking about rolling ADHD together with autism for 30 years.
There's just not enough difference. It's now just, especially now that they're doing spectrums.
Yeah.
It's the same concerns either way.
I agree, Spence. It's like I put on a performance mask and everybody loves it.
And that's probably also why neurodivergent people are a little bit better at it, because you really do need to put on a character for public consumption. One, for your own just mental space and sanity, but you need to know the character that will play to that audience. And that's because of all of the years of masking that we all have gone through. We're used to developing that character that's going to be fit for this particular audience to interact with them. And that's a lot of what onstage performance is.
Also, I know when I was at Miss Jo Carlisle's School of Dance, which I have talked about before, where it was dance to be danced upon. So Miss Jo Carlisle used to put me in the front middle row of the performers for tap, ballet, and jazz for the recitals, because I found it very easy to do the whole routine to the time of the beat, and I didn't get distracted by the audience. Now I remember, now that we're talking about it, I remember some of the other girls in my dance groups talking about, so they would be just as good at me as me keeping the beat, remembering the whole routine, but when they'd get in front of an audience, it was all gone. And I'm like, what is happening? And I just want to point out, I took Miss Jo Carlisle 1st through 3rd grade. So this is still like lower elementary kids talking. But what some of the other girls said was that they find all the faces so distracting, they forget that they need to do the routine because they keep looking in everybody's eyes, versus I had absolutely no interest in looking in all these strangers' eyes. And I know that that is actually another part of ADHD and autism, and probably a bunch of other neurodivergency, is to look in people's eyes is very intense for many neurodivergent people, myself included. Like, it's a lot to look into all these people's eyes. But neurotypicals feel a magnetic attraction to make eye contact with people. Even if there's hundreds of people, it can be overwhelming because they feel this magnetic need to look into and make eye contact with every single person, and there are thousands. Versus when you're neurodivergent, it's like, oh, great, I don't have to. There's too many people. It's fine. I shall look over on the wall. And again, that might be why neurodivergent people tend to have an easier time performing in front of audiences than neurotypical people, because we do not necessarily feel a magnetic attraction to make eye contact with every single stranger there.
Although that does make me want to bring up some random facts we've learned, including what is sometimes referred to as the most dangerous experiment in science.
Oh, the eye gazing thing?
Yes.
Oh, I know. Isn't it so weird?
So one of the things, and it is probably in part why we joke about the straights are not all right, and why are they always jumping into bed together, is they have proven if you can get people to just look into each other's eyes for 5 minutes,
a total of 5 minutes,
they are now friends. You get 10 to 15, they are in a relationship. They will be in bed together soon. No joke. They had to call off the experiment when they did this at 2 different colleges because too many people were getting married.
Who had been randomly assigned to try this eye gazing experiment. And
it's probably in part why neurodivergents are known for being a bit more standoffish and having difficulty forming, large friend groups. We don't like making eye contact, let alone we don't feel that same attachment when we look at people because we're just not making as much eye contact.
Mm-hmm. Because eye contact can be very intense.
But like if someone has a baby and they're just like, I don't feel attached to my baby, just make them stare at the baby's eyes for 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, they found that was all that was necessary to bond adults to a baby, was just have them gaze at the baby for 5 straight minutes total, even in a 30-minute time period, whatever, it didn't matter. And then the person would feel strongly bonded with the baby.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the time where I'm supposed to speak up and say polyamory can be fun?
I would like to tell you all about lovely polyamory, where you do not need to feel jealous because there is more than enough love to go around. Hi, and welcome to Pride Month, and this is my polyamory PSA. And it doesn't have to be sexual. Also,
no.
Yes, people make everything sexual. It could just be romantic. You could just have romantic relationships with friends. And yet it's polyamorous, because many love. That's literally all it means. Okay? It's just polyamory. And it is a way of life. This whole, I can only have one best friend and I can only have one spouse. Oh, y'all, let me tell you, it doesn't have to be that way. You can have it any way you want.
As we were joking behind the scenes, Laura's father has learned this one about, his offspring.
It doesn't all have to be human grandchildren.
Yep.
You can love non-human grandchildren just as much, if not more.
He loves Roy. I think also you can be neurodivergent if, after meeting someone, you can recite that person's entire life story but can't remember their name.
Oh my God! Why are you me, Laura?
That's a special kind of violence.
Yeah.
I have 3 friends that I've been friends with for over a decade, and I do not know their real names.
You have mentioned this a few times.
Yes.
You might be neurodivergent if it takes you half a semester to remember your teacher's name.
Laura, you just have to keep track of the syllabus. It usually has their name on it. And if it doesn't, write it in.
I can't remember what they look like. I walk into class and I just hope it's the right class.
Face blindness. It's a real thing.
Why do all white people look the same?
I know, they really do. Oh my God. So I saw a statistic recently that Mississippi has the most African Americans per capita of any state in the union. And I'm like, yeah, that explains a lot. That definitely explains why, to me, all white people look alike. Because I didn't grow up. Like, I did not grow up around a lot of white people. Almost all of my elementary school teachers were African American. These are all, like, my favorite nanny was African American. Like, literally, which her son and I were almost exactly the same age. Like, literally, we were born the same month, same year. And when we take naps, she would just hold us on the couch, and we would just her chest as a cushion. I'm just saying, she was a very well endowed lady, and we would just be held in her warm embrace. She had big arms like me, and it was just so much. And then we would talk across her belly button to each other, Rashad and I, if she hadn't woken up yet. And like, yeah, white people all look alike to me, but not African Americans, because that was my childhood. I was surrounded by African American faces.
I've never had an African American teacher
That
in
is
all
wild.
of my school life.
Because as I said, every one of my elementary school, with one exception, was African American. Every one of my elementary school teachers and their assistants. But again,
none of mine had assistants except for in college.
There's more African Americans in Mississippi compared to the total population of Mississippi than any other state in the union. I'm like, finally confirmation.
Yeah, most of my friends growing up were either East Asian or Central Asian, like that entire continent down into the what are they calling it now? Oceania.
Yeah. Oceania. I think both should be valid.
Yeah, the schools I went to, we had some white teachers, but there weren't that many.
Yeah, we had a few, but not that many. Very few, in fact, and boy, were they definitely fit the term Karen. Those were the ones our mom used to have to go have regular parent-teacher meetings with.
And so many of them just should have been fired. I had a math teacher that, if you were not paying attention, would literally throw things at you. And I don't mean like erasers. I mean like staplers.
My mother convinced several of my white teachers in my education career to retire or just find new.
My whole class drove multiple teachers to early retirement. They were so misbehaved.
And there you were in the middle of them as the leader of the pack with all the shenanigans.
No, they stuck the worst offenders next to me to try and keep them under control. It's like, no.
See, they knew that you were supposed to be the leader.
Versus, truthfully, you're an aider and abetter.
Yeah, you're an enabler.
No.
Which means you would be great in politics.
Yes. Laura would be great in politics. I genuinely believe that.
She's our Trojan horse. She's going to be the next Prime Minister of Canada.
I'm for this. I'm absolutely for this. Can you be, though? Does Canada have a thing? You have to be born in Canada?
I don't know.
I do love exactly the shade of red that you are becoming. Like, I can paint my walls this color.
My face always goes red, and I don't know why. It's ridiculous.
It's the compliment bondage, I'm pretty sure.
You might be neurodivergent if you can't remember your patients' names, but you remember their coffee preferences even 30 years later. Oh, yeah. That's amazing. You might be neurodivergent if you're constantly explaining your family's behavior to them.
Yeah.
My God, if you have to explain to your family how they are at Thanksgiving to them, you're definitely neurodivergent. And they might be. You might be neurodivergent if you can still remember and do the choreograph you did as an 11-year-old child. Yeah, all right. Okay, you didn't have to come for me like this, CB, but okay. Rude. You might be neurodivergent if you have to not go on a screaming rant that Indigenous Americans, Native Americans, and First Nations are not the same thing. There's layers to this. And on that note, how about we take a little bio break? And when we come back, I don't know. What are we going to do? More of the same, I assume?
Probably. One last one.
You might be neurodivergent if you're queer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially, you're more than likely neurodivergent if you're trans.
Oh, yeah.
I literally have the scientific papers to back this one up.
That's why there a lot of the anti-trans laws are specifically saying you cannot transition if you are autistic.
Mm-hmm. That is why if you are a neurodivergent or if you're queer, you need to help protect both neurodivergent and queer folk.
Though for this Pride Month, I do have to say the Texas law against drag got struck down as unconstitutional. So by a Trump-appointed judge. So a conservative, yeah, the one in Tennessee. I'm sorry, the one in Texas looks like it's going the same way though.
Yeah.
But we might win in court. So yay.
Why should a court care what people wear? I'm just so confused.
Oh, I do not want to go back to court-mandated dresses, y'all. Like I like dresses and I like skirts, but I want to wear whatever I want to wear, and it have nothing to do with the law. But okay, on that note, may I suggest that if you don't have a snack and you don't have anything to drink, now would be a really lovely, lovely time for you to get yourself something to drink. You deserve a snack today. We'll see y'all on the flip side.
It rolled on to the next one. Anybody there?
If you've ever lost track of time while doing something timed and important, you might be neurodivergent. Okay. Yes, thank you, Megan. Beep it a beep.
Did you say Laura Megan? Oh, Megan in chat. I'm so lost. If you can't follow a simple conversation, you might be.
I made a breakfast sandwich. It looks yummy.
Oh no, there's one you just reminded me of, Charlie. If you can't follow a conversation in front of you, but you have 4 different active conversations in your phone with the same person on 4 different apps.
Yeah.
You might be neurodivergent.
So the conversation Tom and I were having, where we lost track of time, is so Kitty's been in my lap the first hour, snuggled up, sleeping. But I'm like, you got to get up, Kitty. I got to make myself something to eat. Because if you've ever forgotten to eat for a whole day, you might be neurodivergent. And I hadn't eaten solid food yet today. So anyway, and Kitty's like, well, if you're going to make yourself food, your lap is not available. I want to go outside. And I'm like, Kitty, it is literally thundering out there and the wind is high. And she's like, so long, suckers. And that's what Tom and I were talking about. Was Tom was like, how's it going? Not even having children, but yet having parenting conversations, huh? And then he referenced Kitty Foreman from the 70s show and totally roasted me. And then I heard Laura's lovely voice. I guess it's going to go to the next one. As if farting corgis is not fun, but okay.
I feel like that's a topic that we could really go into at some point in the future. Hoots just put a video about problematic faves, and when you mentioned that 70s show, I'm just like, I used to watch that show to relax, like the early seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And then Danny Masterson.
Yes. Kind of ruined it.
And
I was enjoying watching The Ranch, and I don't know why. And then, yeah.
And I think there's a lot to dig into there about our memories of a thing and the thing in and of itself.
Mm. So, FYI, there is quite a thunderstorm rolling in. So just if something happens and Tom and I blink out, just hold tight. We'll be back.
Or I'll take over. It'll be fine.
Yes, Laura will take over.
Suddenly the blush returns. All right, shall I
Just
do
leave me
another
to my
flash?
strawberry milk.
Nom, nom, nom.
Let's see, where was that? There. All right, shall I start the next one? 16.
Okay.
Might be neurodivergent if you've ever been so hyper-focused on a topic that you lost track of time, forgot to eat, and didn't realize it was already 3 a.m.
That's my everyday.
You might be neurodivergent if you think it's perfectly normal to learn all the nuances of a hobby in under a week.
Yes.
And if you've ever won an award or a competition for a hobby that you picked up a month ago.
Why have you come for me like this, Tom?
And if the competition has had to change its rules because of you, and now everyone is required to sign a medical waiver.
Totally fine, Tom.
Okay, I'm sorry. I need the story behind that one.
And if your parents keep a display case of all the rules named after you in various competitions.
Okay, no. I'm sorry. You can't keep going forward.
I know nothing. I know nothing.
What did you do? What did somebody do? But since
What
Glory
hobby was it?
disappeared, I'm pretty sure it was Glory. What did Glory do that made them have to sign a medical waiver? Did she light someone on fire?
Oh no,
I did not.
Actually, no. It was me, and it was karate.
Or it was me, and it was yoga.
Yeah.
They
There's
had
various
to
ones we've done. But just, there's a few of my friends. There was a friend I had who went to, the infamous Mississippi School for Math and Science. And her class was very proud that when they went, it was a single sheet of 14 rules for going to the school. When they left, it was 23 pages and several waivers.
Mm-hmm.
Including such notable ones like you may not keep a kiddie pool in your room. You may not run a gambling outfit out of your room. You may not you may not charge for running a server farm out of your room. And
or
so
any
on.
other classroom.
Yes, or any other classroom of this is just the kind of people we come from and we hang out with. Of we're used to there's special rules named after, our friends and us. Because they just didn't see that coming. That is why there is, I think on YouTube, maybe, I don't remember if it was VinWiki or which channel it was, but it was one of the ones that deal with cannonball runs and other questionable things with car racing. And they talked about the most not actually cheating cheater in car racing history from the 70s because he thought differently. I think my favorite was so in NASCAR or something similar, there's a limit on the size of the fuel container you can use in your car. All right. There's no limit, though, he noticed, on how long the fuel line was or what size it was. So the fuel line had an
I thought you were
extra.
going to say how many containers there could be.
Oh no, there is one of that, but the fuel line carried 5 extra gallons.
Yeah.
Of just being neurodivergent though is seeing the world differently.
Mm-hmm.
Of we do not have a problem of thinking outside the box. Our problem is figuring out where is this box everyone else talks about.
Mm-hmm.
So we can pretend to fit in. So, Glory, I think you would be best class to handle this one. What do we know about exceptional IQ children?
There's no such thing as being exceptional IQ and not being neurodivergent. Because the neurology literally has to develop differently in the brain to be capable of super loading. So what is IQ? IQ is about a measurement of processing power. IQ is intelligence quotient, and it specifically is trying to measure potentiality, not actual knowledge. If you can study for a test, that's not IQ.
Hence, Mensa's BS.
Yeah, Mensa's full of shit. So, if you are I think what is okay, hold up. This is literally a quiz question from my education days. I think it's if your IQ is above 117, you are more than likely neurodivergent. And if it's above 133, you are definitely divergent. Hi, Eva. And that's what I was taught in the education program in the mid 2000s already was of the neurotypical brain is simply not capable of being more intelligent than approximately 120 to 130, depending on the test. The neurotypical brain is just not capable of a higher processing power. You have to be wired differently to be above that.
You essentially have to min-max.
Yeah, you have to min-max. Hence, Tony Stark specifically has social awkwardness. He's not always recognizing social cues, and that's not just from being distracted because he's thinking about, so many other things like how to program this or how to solve this problem, but also he's not picking up on cues necessarily, possibly because his brain is literally wired differently in order to. And so what is he actually, and most people who register quite high on IQ tests or above what they're actually capable of measuring, what they really have is a much larger corpus callosum in the middle, which is the connection between the two hemispheres of the brain. And that is where you're actually able to have larger processing and process so many more thoughts and more information at once. And in fact, of the people in the 21st century who have measured off the charts IQ-wise, as far as we could no longer measure their IQ because they were so far out there, of those who were willing to submit to scans, every one of them had a notably enlarged corpus callosum. And also, just a little side fact there, women tend to have larger corpus callosums than men. So take that, women are not as smart as men. Anyway, so what the corpus callosum actually does, not only connecting the two hemispheres, but that is where you get a lot of things that don't seem to go together matching really well. And yes, I am talking about chocolate and peanut butter. Putting two things that are different together in a new and exciting way is something the corpus callosum is specifically known for. So anything that like no one has ever thought of it that way before, that's that person's corpus callosum was probably directly involved in coming up with that. Essentially mix matching things and coming up with something even better. That's a corpus callosum thing. And yes, you can develop your corpus callosum even more by getting out of your comfort zone, because the more you get out of your comfort zone, the more you have to use your corpus callosum in order to problem solve in uncomfortable and new and exciting situations. So travel, for instance, is known to help people develop their corpus callosum, but also just being in new and unusual situations will do that as well.
Or thought of another one.
Okay, what you got?
You might be neurodivergent if you have 3 tabs playing audio at the same time consistently.
And you're fine with it.
Yes. A live stream, music, and rain.
I have no problems.
Brian gets really mad and calls me Data because he'll come into the house sometimes and I'll have 2 different talkie videos explaining things, one on the computer and one on the TV, and I'm paying attention to both of them.
So I want to point this out. One of the things that neurotypicals excel at is doing the same thing again and again because that's how they were taught and not questioning why they do it that way. Now, when I've said this before to other people, they took it as an insult, and I don't mean it as an insult. That is one of the things neurotypicals are quite good at, is they were taught to do it this way. They've never questioned why we do it this way or if there is a better way, and they are very good at doing it again and again. Hence, they can be very good with oral traditions because this is how we've always told the story. So this is how we're going to tell the story now. And we don't tell it any other way. There's true benefits to having neurotypicals on your team And that is one of them, of remembering the history and recounting it exactly the same every time with no variation, no change, and telling it in that linear fashion, in that order as it has always been told. They are very good at that, and that has a lot of benefits. And just the same, neurodivergence, well, yes, of course, we can do the same thing. Yes, plenty of neurodivergents are very good at algebra. But also at like, hey, let's like totally play with it and jazz. Like that is, again, something that neurodivergents excel at compared to neurotypicals, at least in the learning stage, where you're mix matching things, you're playing around with it, and you're jazzing. And again, I want to make it very clear, there is a place for everybody in this world, including neurotypicals, neurodivergents, because yes, as Maggie said, if you've met one neurodivergent person, you've met one neurodivergent person. We are talking about how certain symptoms present in the world. Hence, like, I used to think it was only my family that is like allergic to closing all the kitchen cabinet doors before leaving the kitchen. And then I came across several memes talking about boomers and how they always leave them open. And I'm like, oh, it's not just us. Oh, cool. And I told my mom, this was so long ago that my mom was still alive. And I told her about it. She's like, oh, other people do that? And I'm like, apparently a lot of boomers do, which she then grimaced at me because she didn't like boomers. She didn't like the term boomers, I mean. She was a boomer. Just saying. Yeah.
One thing I was thinking of and was reminded of is, speaking of neurodivergent versus neurotypical, Eva was bringing up those, I was 8 years old when I learned stuff. And a lot of those are actually from neurodivergent thinking. Two that immediately come to mind and are real simplistic, but I know specifically were not designed for that, but everyone's like, oh, that is a much better way, is so putting a 12-ounce can, if you want to use a straw with it, you can just twist the tab that opens a 12-ounce can around till it's over the opening and put your straw in there, and it'll actually help keep the straw down and in place. That is neurodivergent thought. That was never planned or for it to be like that. And the same for what are they called? Juice boxes that have bendy straws. People point out, but if you put the bendy straw side down, it'll be easier at reaching the corners, which absolutely true, but is not the way it was actually designed. That is a neurodivergent way of thinking. And that's, someone has come up with and going, hey, if I flip this upside down, it'll work even better for this feature. For this thing. And that's what we're talking about versus, everyone else. And to show how much everyone does the same behaviors, because that's the way they were taught. How many people eat bananas like it's a zipper? And it's because that's what you always saw growing up, is people, unzipping a banana. Versus it is a lot easier just to go on the other side and break the little cap where the flower was, and you can just peel it off. Versus having to, use a thumbnail to actually open a banana. But it's useful, it works, it functions. It just depends on the situation, whether it's things are easier if with a neurotypical or neurodivergent frame of mind. Should we do Megan's?
Sure.
Megan's, you might be neurodivergent if you have a certain outfit you wear because it's ultra comfortable, more so than any other, even if it's an identical shirt or something.
My husband's entire wardrobe.
They're all black t-shirts or polos. Yes, but this is the best one.
Yeah, he found a shirt and a pair of shorts that he likes, and he just, filled with them. And I have to say, that skirt I got for the trip, I'm planning on doing that with it because it comes in like 5 different colors, so I can at least pretend it's different.
Yeah, our father was a light blue button-down shirt and navy blue polyester pants.
Okay.
Slack. Anytime I see a man walking on the street with that, I'm like, Dad, no. Because, like, he literally wore that for my entire childhood and adulthood. Like,
The JCPenney's business casual look.
yep.
Here's something we know from our family. If you open the fridge 3 times and can't remember why you opened the fridge until you close it.
Why are you coming for me? Refrigerators are the devil.
Why don't they come with glass doors?
I have talked to my husband about this a lot. He was talking about replacing one of the coolers we had at the restaurant back when we were still selling as kind of with a grocery area. And I was like, can we just bring the old one home? Because I can see through the door.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We all know those comfy shirts.
Mm-hmm.
Although if you watch the 50s Houses of Future, they all did show we will have glass fronted fridges or impingement fridges. So that you don't even need a door. You just use a little air curtain to keep it cold. But no. Too fancy.
Eating the same thing for 5 days in a row. Just go on a pizza kick.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Me and my food obsessions.
Listen to the same song on repeat for 3 days in a row.
Oh,
For
God.
hours and hours a day.
Glory knows that one.
Having a playlist that you whittle down to your favorite song and then slowly expand it back out again.
Having your cooking spices and baking spices in different cabinets and doubles of the ones that are for both. Or having 2 jars of nut paste, one for spoons and one for spreading.
I really feel like the name of this show should be changed to "Can Charlie Still Feel Shame?" Y'all are getting really close to awakening a demon that had died in me long ago. Because I'm just like, oh, okay, all this.
It's time to look at your ableism. So Tom knows. Yesterday, Tom came home a little early. He wasn't feeling great. He laid down on the couch. I did not even apologize. I had a playlist already set up that I was planning on watching before he got home early. And it was every version of Part of Your World I could find on YouTube played one after another as I deep dived into this song to better understand it. And then Tom and I started talking about the nuances of Howard Ashman and the song and how he really took the want song, and its revival is of women's want songs, which were not a thing in musicals before Ashman. Like a little bit, but not like so inspiring. Just with The Little Mermaid and Little Shop of Horrors, Ashman brought the female want song into its crowning glory. And I just was like, I even found male versions of Part of Your World and everything. And we talked about, and Tom was like, Jodie Benson's version, nobody's compares to hers. And I'm like, yeah, number one, we both know Howard Ashman actually wanted Barbra Streisand to do the singing in The Little Mermaid. but she was not available. And so we know what he wanted. He wanted Barbara's emotiveness and her warmth in her voice. However, he got second best, Jodi Benson. Still very talented, still very emotive. What an amazing vibrato. And then I told Tom, oh, you want to see Howard Ashman actually coach Jodi Benson? I found a video. Put it on and made him watch that. As, yes, my entire deep dive into every singer's interpretation of Part of Your World and how they are absolutely missing what it is like to be a gay man in America in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and 80s and die of AIDS. Like, that this is it. This is his swan song. Yeah, I did not apologize to Tom for that. He just had a deal.
Hey, Glory. There's one for you.
Is there a link between difficulty with coordinated movement of any type and neurodivergence? Yeah, literally. Like
that is actually one of the first signs in children.
Yes, that's literally clumsy children are immediately evaluated to see if they are neurodivergent because when they're first starting to walk, every child is clumsy because the neurology is not developed. So human babies are born 9 months before they really would normally be born if we were different species, if we weren't primates. The reason why humans are born 9 months early and the gestation is only 9 months instead of 18 months is because human hips have to be a certain shallowness and the baby can't pass through if it's any bigger. Hence cesareans in the first place. So babies are essentially born when they're only half baked. And so their neurology is not fully formed even for infants compared to other species. So all babies are clumsy. But after the first 2 years, most children are not notably clumsy. So if a child is still clumsy, they are evaluated for being neurodivergent because of that.
So is it neurodivergence if you continually shoulder check door jams on accident?
So it actually depends on what age. So if you're going through a normal growth spurt, it's kind of normal actually, because your body is suddenly growing in a way that you haven't quite worked out. If you're not going through a growth spurt and you're still doing it, yes. So that's what I mean of there's nuance here. So, and that has to do with proprioceptors, which again can be different for neurodivergent people than neurotypical people. That's right. There are many people on this planet, now and in the past, whose proprioceptors tell them where they are accurately. And then there's people like me.
I get lost in straight hallways. I came out of my dorm, went to the middle of the drinking fountain, went the wrong direction, and tried to break into my RA's room. It's like, dang it!
I mean, the Good Place called it directional madness.
I am hopeless in video games. Like, I can't do it.
I know. That's why it's always like, yeah, Brian, you go ahead and take the lead into these dungeons when we play Valheim. Because it's like, it's going to take us at least 4 times as long for me to get out of here.
I'm happy when I can find the front door of the house in Phasmophobia.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I've always been this way. So like, we grew up in a small town, and we had, as we talked before, we had older parents. So we were raised very much more like kids in the 60s than anything more recent. So I'd go exploring on my own, even when I was young. And, I had a bike. I'd bike around town. I got lost plenty, but it took me for a long time to build up a mental map of the town, and it was in little segments. I had to essentially build up little paths, and then eventually I started to figure out how the paths connected, but it took forever for me to figure out which direction stuff was. I'd call my mother or father, like, can you come pick me up? I'm at this place. I don't know where that is.
When I moved to a new area, I had to memorize a map upside down. Like, the map had to be upside down. It was okay. And then suddenly one day it just flipped right side up in my mind. I was like, what is this? What is this? I know where we're going.
Our parents were kind of fascinated because I was the opposite of, it didn't matter if this was my first time in a new town. I automatically knew how to get in and out. I knew how to get to wherever we wanted. I also had pretty good intuition about where places would be in a town I had never been to. So when we would get to the town, Mom would ask, where's the grocery store? Where do you think the grocery store would be? And I think it was like 80 to 90% of the time, my first guess was correct about where would you put a grocery store in this town that looks like this. So again, neurodivergence is neurodivergence. And even though Tom and I share 7 or more alleles and we are both full siblings, we are not the same. And our strengths and our challenges are unique to us. It's not even, oh, well, neurodivergent people are all the same in the same family. No, it's not even a little bit of that. It's truly a dice roll. You never know what you're going to get.
Hence, there's 4 people on the screen, and it's rarely all 4 of us who groan about any of these jokes.
Yeah, it's just some of us.
Why do I feel like your eyes are drifting towards me when you say that?
So yes, if you get lost somewhere, go find me. Just yell, Chloe, or what was it Tom used to yell? Wowie! Where is my Wowie? Get me out of here, Wowie! And I would go find him and then lead him back to the house. Then drop him off and go back to playing.
Oh no, D100s are totally little golf balls.
They do kind of look like them.
All right, let's see. Where did I leave off?
How about you might be neurodivergent? If you've ever taken apart an electronic device just to see how it works and then put it back together better than before. Every engineer ever that I have babysat for, if I show them a new gadget I have, they'll be like, oh, and then they field strip it. And I'm like, I really need that back together before I go home. No, okay, let me put it back together. Here you go. Also, I cleaned all the ends. I'm like, oh, thank you. Or, oh, the batteries don't seem to be working very well, and I've changed out the batteries. Could you check? And they've totally taken apart the electrical and then put it back together and cleaned all the tips.
Mm-hmm.
Did I, in fact, as a teenager, watch? So Mississippi Public Broadcasting used to show literally in the middle of the night after like midnight or 1 a.m. They would show all these educational videos that schools were supposed to record to show in their classes. And one of them was an entire semester course on VCR repair. And I used to watch it in the middle of the night, and within 1 month had fixed 2 VCRs in our house that had already broken and got them back up and running. Just by taking them apart and cleaning the ends of all the every connection that I could do without like breaking the soldering.
Mm-hmm.
Dad's like, oh my God, that's amazing. And I'm like, it's really not, but thank you. Thank you, Father. You may be neurodivergent if you have a supply of craft items and you don't have any plans to use but need to keep just in case.
Apparently that is at least half of the people in the...
Yep. Eva's calling everybody out. You might be neurodivergent if waiting for an appointment or something puts you in a waiting pattern. Like you can't do anything until the appointment because you might get too distracted and forget. Oh, mood. Mood. How dare. How very dare.
Ah, yes, the dangers of the 2 p.m. appointment.
Here, hold a shot. Yeah, there's Laura. You might be neurodivergent if you've ever gotten lost in your own neighborhood. I literally called her out. Okay, I'm going to tell it myself because I shouldn't call Laura out if I'm not going to go there too. Here it goes, Laura. When I was 2 years old, I got lost in a refrigerator box and had a panic attack.
I was in college when I got lost on a straight line. In the dorms.
Thanks, Roy. Yeah, me too, honey. You may be neurodivergent if you check the time on your phone and then go tell someone the time and forget the time. Mood.
Or you pick up your phone to check the time and then get distracted by a notification and completely forgot why you picked up your phone in the first place.
You might be neurodivergent if you've ever organized your sock drawer by color, texture, and how they feel when you sleep in them.
You might be neurodivergent if you find the how do they do it section of Sesame Street and the program How It's Made fascinating.
You might be neurodivergent if you've ever experienced sensory overload and felt like you were being attacked by an army of Saturday morning lawnmowers.
I hate walking down the street sometimes because there's so many semis and motorcycles. It's so loud.
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of like that it's now become a fashion to wear large, obnoxious headphones out in public. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it's like you can just use those to turn on the noise canceling. You don't have to have anything going on it just to quiet everything down.
I have my first ever pair of noise canceling headphones now, so
nice.
Yay.
Maggie's, you may be neurodivergent if you're wearing more than one pair of glasses at a time and compare looking through them at a thing.
If that shows up in a story I'm working on, you know why, Maggie.
You might be neurodivergent if you've ever had an entire conversation in memes and GIFs. Yes.
So many times.
I'm looking at y'all.
Words are hard. Pictures say so much, especially when they move.
Look, I'm not saying anything. Memes are my love language.
Roy's love language is street bread.
Street bread.
Oh, Spence is just like, shut Glory.
You might be neurodivergent if you are a jukebox and just go from song to random song because of a thread that only you know.
You might be neurodivergent if you've ever had an entire conversation with someone else in song form.
And movie quotes.
Or both.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You may be neurodivergent if you start talking about cats and end up talking about the first moon landing and other scenarios.
Done that. You may be neurodivergent if you turn the radio station on your car just to change it.
You might be neurodivergent if you've ever had a collection of toys that rivals the toy section of a department store. Why have you come for me this way, Tom?
It's an accomplishment, Gloria. It's an accomplishment.
I had quite a stuffy collection for the first 30 years of my life.
It's true, you did.
I'm working on mine now.
My father got mine started. My father used to truly believe that being able, like, that somehow I would feel his love if he just gave me stuffed animals rather than say it or hug me. Neurodivergence.
Because of the real dangerous form of gender ideology. I wasn't allowed to have stuffed animals when I was a kid.
Yeah, Tom wasn't either. Tom wasn't allowed to have stuffed puppies or anything other than Tonka trucks, which I wanted Tonka trucks, and he wanted stuffed puppies.
Pizza Demon has a stuffy collection.
Very nice. Yes, Tom had quite a fascinating collection of rocks and petrified wood. Very impressive. He still has it. That's why I call him a goblin.
I had a whole box of seashells, but I live 15 minutes from the beach.
We lived an hour from the beach, and Tom had a very impressive collection of seashells and other former housing of other animals. I'll put it that way.
Like rib cages?
Yeah, actually, yes.
I remember Mom and Dad wondering where I found a lot of this stuff because it wasn't anything you'd normally see in the area.
He would go for walks. You just go for walks, find ribs. You never know.
Eva, that did not stop me from getting a lot of seashells somehow.
You used to take them when you would go to people's houses and go to their bathroom, and it was the 80s, so everybody had these baskets of seashells, and Tom would be like, don't mind if I do. And would just take his favorite out of their basket, put it in his little boy pocket, act like nothing's wrong, get home, add and say, what? They're there for everybody. You just take one. Like, doesn't everybody, like, you have a little glass bowl of candies? Doesn't everybody have a basket of seashells? You just take one that you like? You don't take a ton. That's rude.
Now I feel really called out.
He explained this to me of you just take one. And so what we used to do as kids, because I knew he liked seashells, was if I saw him go to the bathroom, knowing full well he was about to take somebody's seashell from their basket, I would intercept him as he would leave and go, okay, what's your second favorite one? And I'll take that one. And then, you know, when we get home, I just hand him the seashell. It was literally years before our parents figured out that we'd been pilfering people's seashell baskets, like from their baskets. It took years. And then by that point, they're like, who do all these seashells belong to? And it's like, I don't remember all these people.
I love Maggie's analogy of bathroom seashells were the mints of the 80s.
That was little Tom's opinion. And so it's like, well, fine. If you're taking them, I'm going to take, which one's your second favorite? I'll take that one.
Although also, in my defense, a bunch of seashells were actually, we call them fossilized.
Yeah.
Because the area we lived in had been a seafloor.
Yeah.
And there were just a ton if you like to be in the dirt.
So what Tom started doing, by the time you were 7, was he would take his favorite seashell from each basket, and then he would put his second favorite on the very top, so that when I go to the bathroom, I know which one to put in my pocket. He explained this whole system to me. This is what I will do, and then you will. And okay, and then he would fully expect. Did you get it? Did you get the one? Because I objected to taking huge conch shells with me, of like, people can see it in my pocket. You might be neurodivergent if you had a collection of something. I mean, yeah. You might be neurodivergent if you have a journal that's too pretty to use. Oh, there's a mood.
Isn't that just being a writer?
Mm-hmm. But, yeah.
I use my journals.
Yeah, but I have a couple that have been given to me that are really, really nice. And I'm like, something special has to go in these. They can't just have anything in them. So often they become really, really weird esoteric books that one day people are going to find and be like, oh.
I mean, yeah, I've got one that is just a book of spells. It's useful to remember them.
And you always remember which one you wrote it in, because it's the really pretty one over there.
That's true.
All right. Ready for a little break?
Yes. Again, I would like to suggest if you don't have anything to drink, now would be a wonderful time to locate something to drink. And we will see y'all in approximately 10 minutes. Beepity beep. Bibbity 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 beep. Bibbity beep. Bibbity 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 beep. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, bienvenue, welcome. Stranger. La 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 la, je suis enchanté. Lovely to see you, my restless stage. It's just me, all by myself, and my madness.
Is it time to continue on? We left off with other signs you might be neurodivergent.
The doggos are back in and the tea is making. Kitty has yet to return. You might be neurodivergent if you've ever found yourself completely engrossed researching a fascinating fact and suddenly realized you've been talking to yourself for the past 5 minutes.
I didn't get lost in my own house, I promise.
I'm so glad that you have learned where it's located.
It's just the cats rearranging things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, they do with the balls and stuff, which is really tricksy because it's easy to trip in the middle of the night.
You might be neurodivergent if you've ever been mistaken for a thesaurus because your vocabulary sends people reaching for their dictionaries. Is that the one of the ones that ChatGPT came up with?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, all of these have been edited and punched up and improved because it's ChatGPT is best for monotone dad jokes.
Oh, it's so good at those, though.
But if you're looking for ones with an actual punchline, like how to deliver a real punchline, you have to rewrite them. And that's why, I've rewritten all of these. I mean, but yeah.
There's part of me that kind of wants my summer art project just to be writing a whole new season of The Office only using ChatGPT, not tell anybody and see if they can tell.
Hi, Noah. Noah says you might be neurodivergent if you found your way here. I mean, yeah, fair. And yet some people still learn to know. You might be neurodivergent if you've ever been described as having a brain like a search engine, but you try not to correct them that it's actually a card catalog. That's one Tom came for me on.
See, I love how fancy your brain is, that it's a card catalog. Like, I've got an old school medieval library system in my brain where there's one dude on staff that knows where everything is, but he's often asleep at his desk and does not want to wake up, or is just grumpy and refuses to tell me where the stuff is.
I love that you're like, it's fancy. She got fancy brain. Like, oh, okay.
Well, it's all newfangled. It's like card catalog. It's after the Dewey Decimal System.
Yes, it is.
Stuff.
Yes.
I've got that scene in Game of Thrones where they're like, we need to find something in the library. They're just like, I don't know, talk to somebody or just look around. You might find it. They're just books. They're everywhere.
Here's one I think Charlie may inadvertently have to accept. You might be neurodivergent if you've ever caught yourself stimming and thought, hey, how long have I been such a great dancer?
Yeah.
You might be neurodivergent if you've ever gotten so lost in thought that you accidentally walked into a signpost. I've done that multiple times.
Thinking is just problematic.
Megan's, you might be neurodivergent if you have set multiple alarms for things.
Yes. Oh, so many. Maggie says all the scrolls from the Library of Alexandria scattered on the ocean floor.
Yeah, that feels about right.
Is that a fair assessment?
And the problem is the old guy wakes up every now and then and pulls out a random scroll and goes, I found the thing you're looking for. And I can't stop talking about it because I finally have the information back. But nobody can remember why that topic was of interest at all.
Noah, I have literally walked into walls in my home and the walls have not moved. You think I know where they are. I still walked it. And it wasn't even dark. Okay. I can't go, oh, well, it was in the dark. And I was just, no, it wasn't dark. I have done that in the dark, but I've also done that in the light.
Yeah, I've broken toes because of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No. Okay, what is truly? This is a sign you're neurodivergent / you have ADHD. If you've ever been driving and a what do you call them? A post has jumped out in front of your car.
That's what Mom used to say. It just jumped out right there in front of my car. I couldn't stop. I'm like, ma'am, you were distracted. Things set in concrete don't just jump out into the road.
See, when you say things like that, I feel very grateful that I have never driven a car. I feel like I would be in jail or dead. I'm too easily distractible and I have too many other problems.
Let me rephrase this one of Megan's. Your family might be neurodivergent if you all have to practice looking normal. Like if this is a family pastime.
I feel like CB might be one of the few people here that still have this reference in their brain, but I feel like every time we went anywhere, it was that scene from The Simpsons where Marge was trying to get them into the country club. Like that was every time. Like we're going to the mall. Mom's going to sit the family down and lecture us about mall etiquette. We're going to church every Sunday, but Mom has to sit us down first and explain church etiquette. Like no matter what we're doing. Going to grandma's house. We're going to visit the neighbors. We're going to play in the little park behind the house.
Although that does remind me, speaking of things, references not everyone's going to get. Charlie, have you thought about changing your audio avatar to just putting a little white picket fence halfway across it?
I have actually. I've thought about that. I'm currently working on what the summer one's going to be, and I have ideas in one. I basically looked at the thumbnail and went, "Oh no, I am not. No home improvement rules." So, yeah.
I believe that is everyone here. You might be neurodivergent if people are constantly asking if you're okay, even when you're in a good mood.
See, I have the corollary of that is every time I'm in a good mood, I'm like, am I dying? It's just like the last euphoria on the way out. Like, what's going on here?
No, that's being Jewish, Charlie.
I literally woke up in the middle of the night and was like, maybe I'm already dead. Literally this morning, that is how I woke up pre-dawn. Maybe I'm already dead and this is just me dead. And then I snuggled back in my bed like, ooh, maybe I'm already dead, and then fell back asleep. You might be neurodivergent if this is playing in 3 rooms of your house.
One universal remote to rule them all.
Mm-hmm.
And, as Glory found out from someone, yes, Megan, quite correct. You might be neurodivergent if you still use emojis and text speak after you graduate.
Yep.
Look, the Egyptians and the Chinese were right. Pictograms are often better.
But I mean, truly, you see there's many ways to, come to the same situation.
You might be neurodivergent if you've ever found yourself passionately defending a fictional character like they were a close personal friend.
Hey! I mean, true, but hey!
Now I'm going to give one of the dumbest ones that Glory still feels awkward about, and I say no, I think it's a good one. You might be neurodivergent if you've ever proudly displayed your collection of STEM toys and a guest mistook it for your new modern art exhibit.
That is how I got away with having all my STEM toys on display at the library at my desk, was people thought it was modern art.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't tell them it was that. They just assumed, oh, but Glory's so classy, this has got to be art sculptures. Sure it is.
Yes, they're interactive modern art.
Yes. I'm like, look, so you can do it. And they're like, oh, wow, Glory, it's so amazing. You might be neurodivergent if you've ever accidentally zoned out during a conversation and agreed to run a weekend event.
Oh.
I know. I was like, how many people? Because it's like every member of our family, most of my exes.
That's how I got involved in the first Worldwide Write-a-thon. I have no idea what I was even talking to or who I was talking to, but I started getting information about what time and date I was supposed to be doing things. I was like, what is this about? I had to scroll back because it wasn't even like a talky thing. We were typing to each other, and I found the place where I had agreed in the typing and went, oh, bad automatic system. Bad.
Yep. Like Tom and I have inadvertently ended up, that's how I got so good at catering retreats, was not realizing that I had accidentally said, oh, I could do that for you, while I was zoned out. And people caught me multiple times. And that is how I have so much experience catering retreats. And LARPing weekend events and SCA events at you name it, camps. I can cater primitive camping events.
I mean, but look, at least you're saving yourself from the hot dogs.
Oh, yeah. Oh. Hot dogs and watery Stouffer's vegetable lasagna. May they both rot in hell.
But Maggie, to say no, you have to first be paying enough attention.
Yeah, you'd have to be conscious.
Versus distracted, trying to remember what show that was that you want to use a reference about.
So the problem, Maggie, with remembering to say no or being able to say no is you have to know you're having the conversation and be cognizant of the conversation happening at the time. Because I'm very good at saying no. I say no to a lot of people about a lot of things a lot of the time. It's just when I get in that certain distracted place, or dear God, my husband takes advantage of this all the time where he'll realize exactly when I'm like in the flow working on something and decide that he wants something for dinner that I hate or wants to get something for the house that he knows I don't exactly approve of. And he'll ask then, just because he knows I will be able later when he's like, but you agreed, to recall the moment of agreement, but not remember it until it arrives.
Megan, that's a different veggie lasagna.
Yeah, like if you know the hell if you've ever had Stouffer's veggie lasagna. It is the most watery, nasty, tasteless, unspiced thing to exist.
It is not tomato based.
No. It's also not cream
based.
It's hell. They don't cook or roast the vegetables ahead of time, so that all that water, it's like, can I interest you in white noodle soup? It's so gross.
I'm like 50% sure it's proof that Soylent Green is real.
Yeah, it's so gross. It's so gross. Like chicken and dumplings is better. It's so gross. And it is the reason I have made enemies inadvertently by being excellent. That is how I ended up catering this women's retreat, because one of the organizers was trying to prove that you can't have a vegetarian option at every meal for less than $300 for all 55 women for 3 days. And then I did it.
No, I think hers was actually like $650, $800.
Yeah, and I did it for $300 for 55 women for 3 days, all meals and snacks. This was the mid 2000s. And she was really mad at me, and she is still not my friend, because I didn't know she was trying to prove a point that you can't do it. And then I did it. Yeah. And nobody could complain about my vegetarian options, because I did a freaking great job. Also, she refused to believe that my vegetarian options were truly vegetarian and that I didn't use like meat stock or anything.
I love a good vegetable bouillon.
Mm-hmm. I made my own from scratch, because this is before vegetable stock was widely available at grocery stores. So I had to make, 16 gallons of my own vegetable stock and freeze it for use. But anyway, haters gonna hate.
Yeah, she was not used to thinking in a budget like that.
Right. She also then showed up going, oh, but this is not vegetarian. I'm like, it's literally vegetarian. She's like, oh, no, vegan. And I was like, well, you didn't say vegan, but in fact, almost everything actually is vegan. There's enough for anyone who is vegan. And then when I asked, who is vegan? And she tried to say, well, I'm vegan. And her daughter called her out and said, you're not vegan at all. Her teenage daughter totally called her out of, when did you become vegan on the way here? Literally called her out.
They need another term, because veganism is a cult.
Also, she wasn't vegan. And I was like, yeah, I thought you liked cheese. She's like, oh, well, I was like, that's not vegan. You know that, right? Like, you can't say you're vegan and still eat a block of cheese at night, to which her daughter was like, oh my God, how did you know mom does that? And I'm like, anybody who likes cheese, I've learned apparently everyone but me sits down with whole blocks of cheese at night to eat. I think I may be the only person who's not actually allergic to dairy. Yeah. Exactly. Like, it wasn't hard to make vegetable stock, but it just took some forethought. And some of y'all will actually get previews at Chicago of a bunch of the recipes that I made for the women's retreat, because I'm actually sticking to a similar menu. Hence, we're having baked potato bars and barbecue night, and all sorts of goodness. And of course, Shabbos. Essentially, you might be neurodivergent if you've ever taken a perfectly innocent comment as a personal challenge and ended up in a heated debate about the superiority of chocolate chip cookies or oatmeal raisin.
You might be neurodivergent if people compliment you on being so creative, and when they don't realize that you do so many different things because you can't focus on one long enough to finish anything.
'Tis true.
I mean, what I have learned about cookies is it's kind of like vegetables at meals. It's often who makes them and how.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, I understand why a lot of people do not like oatmeal raisin cookies because there's some really awful ones out there.
Some truly hateful ones.
And it's like, okay, so yeah, it's usually the recipe is simpler for chocolate chip, and more often it'll be edible.
Mm-hmm.
And just like with vegetables, of if you have one of those parents who misunderstood that a dash of lemon juice was there to keep greens bright green, not as a flavorant, so it is now all tart.
Yeah.
And weird tasting. I understand where you don't like a lot of green vegetables at dinner because you've been traumatized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nobody wants like tart spinach.
No.
Or
like
if
tart cooked spinach.
Or if you have one of those parents who didn't know how to tell when, meats were cooked, so the chicken is all overcooked, but they were told, chicken breasts were healthier than chicken thighs, so it's overcooked and dry and again, there's ways to ruin everything, and if you never had a good version of it, it's understandable.
There's also the problem that a lot of cookie preference comes down to like what I swear is like religious denominational squabbling, where no, in our family we only eat like it's there's a weird belief aspect to a lot of people's cookie preference.
People tell me how much they hate raisins or nuts in their cookies, and I'm like, okay, I'll make it without. Like, it's cool. I understand a lot of people have had a lot of bad raisins in their life. I myself have also had a lot of bad raisins. And I also feel that way about coconut in a lot of sweets. Again, I've had a lot of bad versions that were just horrible. And I am calling out my mother on this. But I also then, talked to that person. It was a coworker of like, what do you think of trying out a new experiment I'm doing? And give me your honest feedback. Would you be willing to try an oatmeal raisin cookie with walnuts? With toasted walnuts? And she was, I had made her so many other things that she's like, okay, I'm willing to give it a try. I'm like, thank you. And she tried my oatmeal raisin with toasted walnuts. And she said, look, promise me you won't tell my mother, but these are amazing. And yeah, that her mother had made many bad versions versus there's several things that I did to mine to make it better. Including soaking the raisins in hot water and Patron. Don't come for me. And so that they would have an orangey taste. And also toasting the walnuts ahead of time. Like, seriously, if you're baking with nuts and you're not toasting them ahead of time, what is the point? Just use nut butter instead. What is the point? So again, like, it was kind of enlightening for her to learn, it's not that you hate all of these things. It's just that you haven't had many that were good. There is a difference.
Well, there's also a weirdness that's happened in modern cookery where we forget that most dried fruit were meant to be reconstituted in something prior to use. And that really changes the flavor and texture of them when they're actually handled properly. But for some reason, we've turned them into just ingredients. And while they can work that way in some applications, it's not really why they became a staple in the first place.
Like, especially a very classic fruitcake from, 200 years ago was required, I think for a 5-pound fruitcake, it needed something like 3 gallons of liquor to be poured on it.
It was pretty, it was quite a bit. It took like weeks, took 12 weeks. to get it to absorb that much alcohol.
Because I remember my grandmother's fruitcake, and I'm like, every time I hear people like, I don't like fruitcake, I'm like, have you ever had an actual fruitcake, like a real one?
Like a traditional fruitcake.
Because
like medieval traditional, or at least like 1700s, 1600s traditional. Of like, it takes all autumn to make a fruitcake.
Yep.
It literally takes 12 weeks of just every 3 days applying more alcohol.
Yep.
Until all that dried fruit suspended in the batter, the baked batter, has now had time to absorb all the alcohol, and a lot more flavor has been unlocked because those flavonoids are dissolvable in alcohol. So all the spices in the batter and then the dried fruit, it's able to unlock it. But that takes time. And most people are not willing to spend that kind of time. 12 whole weeks, every 3 days tending to the fruitcake. Like, it's just not a thing most people will do anymore.
And she would alternate between golden rum and spiced rum. And the two together would make this magical flavor in it. And like, oh my God.
And it's just like eggnog. Again, it's something that you can't rush and requires a lot of time to get it to work out right. They didn't like it fresh either.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Noah, I'm actually working on my own rye bread, black bread recipes now as well. Because, like, I too wish to find a version I like with no caraway seeds. I will die on this hill.
Every time I see a recipe that has caraway in it, I hear your voice in the back of my head screaming in agony and hatred.
Why have you ruined it? Ah!
It's a permanent fixture in my mind now.
I'm so glad that I now have space, that permanent space in your mind. Thank you. It's good. It's good I won't be forgotten.
You have been added to the chorus.
Because caraway. Look, there's no need to ruin good bread with caraway seeds, for frick's sake. Let alone throughout it. Like, you could just put it on top so I can pick them off. But no, we need a whole cup of caraway seeds in just one little loaf. Like, why are y'all like this? Just admit you obviously have some kind of dietary deficiency and just eat the caraway seeds and be done.
I think it's a special form of masochism, personally.
It's so strong. Like, so gross. Ugh.
Yep, that's the sounds every time. Every time.
Like, I found out that there is a very traditional Eastern European recipe for rye bread that's a sourdough. And you specifically start it with onions, chopped up onions and caraway seeds. And that's how you start your sourdough starter. That I'm not ugging. It's okay. That makes sense. I don't hate the flavor of caraway. I hate the overkill of caraway.
It's like rosewater.
Yes. Again, I do not want... Remember I told you about those rosewater shortbread cookies that it was like, with the smell and the texture, it was like eating those pretty little bathroom soaps. It was so disturbing. Yes. Of like a little... I love it when the fennel is like really old, so it's not really strong. Like, it's like, yeah, that's the kind of fennel I want in my sausage. Ancient, forgotten fennel.
Well-made Turkish delight is magical, but oh god, so much of it's just making out with a botanical garden.
Mm-hmm.
That for some reason has powdered sugar on top.
Yeah, I don't want the overkill of flavor. And from what I understand, that's how like all of Europe feels about American root beers. Of like, oh my god, it's like drinking carbonated toothpaste. It's so gross. And I get it. I say that as somebody who genuinely loves wintergreen, and there's like hardly any real wintergreen oil flavors anymore, because it turns out wintergreen is like natural aspirin and people can overdose on it. And also you can like remove paint finish with wintergreen oil. Awkward. But anyway, I love it. I love real wintergreen. But that, yeah, like everyone else is used to it toothpaste, so they do not want it in their soda. I feel that way about caraway and fennel and really anise, licorice flavors of like, you don't have to hit me over the head with this. Okay, thank you so much.
I kind of want to go get a glass of Grand Marnier now. Thank you, Maggie.
We've got some Frangelico here. Maybe I'll have a little sippy sip of Frangelico after the show.
Yeah, you always have to keep Frangelico in the house. Frangelico.
Yes, I think it's a law. I'm pretty sure it's some sort of spiritual law, right? Because we'll just have random bottles of Frangelico pop up in our liquor cabinet if we don't have any Frangelico.
Like, I love a good Irish coffee, but have you had a Frangelico in your coffee? I mean,
it's so much better. I do not know why people get excited about Bailey's when there's Frangelico in this world.
Because Bailey's paid that much.
It's really bottom barrel, y'all.
Oh, yeah.
I used to feel that way about rosemary till I started growing my own and had fresh rosemary. And then it was like, oh, I get it now. Like fresh rosemary that had not been treated with pesticides or anything and was just growing, living its best life in a pot. Because like I love to buy rosemary bushes around Christmas time here because they shape them into Christmas trees and they're so cheap. And it's like, and rosemary will just live the whole rest of the year down here in South Mississippi because it's so hot and it never gets that cold. So rosemary's like, this is where I live. But yeah, that stuff's awesome. But dried rosemary is disgusting and will find every space in your teeth. It's so gross.
So I don't know what our rose bushes had against rosemary, but we had a rosemary bush on one side of our steps and a rose bush on the other. And the rose bush grew a vine behind the steps over to the rosemary, wrapped itself around the rosemary so that it basically strangled it off and killed it. And then that vine died. Like it was like it grew a special vine to be like, no, I'm the only thing that can smell good here. Because we have a southern facing house, and having a rosemary in the southern light, in the southern sun, that perfume every time you open the door is so delightful. But our rose bush killed it.
All I know is that sounds like a scene from Sex and the City. I'm just not sure what the argument would be between.
Or Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So does anyone have any final thoughts?
I think it's important for us to be able to make fun of ourselves and to approach life with humor. More than anything else, lately, I feel like because so many groups are under attack right now and there's just so much just generalized stress that various companies and politicians are using to entrench their power, we are getting very defensive and very self-protective. And that can be important when threats are coming from outside. But when you're in a community with your own people, having that sense of humor, having that ability to just laugh and joke around and self-deprecate in a healthy way is important because it helps us feel like, everything's okay. We're not alone.
And also that we don't hold the mundane as sacred.
Yeah. Because trust me, I get the instinct to be very self-protective of my communities because there is a lot of ugly and evil out in the world. I mean, there are a lot of hats off Nazis right now. And like, if you're not familiar with what's going on in Tom Morello with a lot of people outing themselves lately, it wasn't Tom Morello. He didn't out himself. He made a post that caused a lot of brown shirts to come out of the closet. But, having that sense of humor is really, really important. And if we lose that's really, I feel like that's how the bad people win, when they take away our ability to find joy in the foibles of our own lives.
Maggie said, we need to not let ourselves get offended because there's so many media influencers who just seek to attack everyone. if you can find humor and show that this is not a negative defining trait of it's just a part of you, then you also take away that power from others who want to abuse it against you of, welcome to, it's just part of being human for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there's nothing, good, bad, or indifferent about it. It's just a kind of living. It's just a different kind of living.
And like some of it is the welcome to also what it takes to have a friendship. Including that part of, if I say 5 minutes, call in 10 or 20, I may have forgotten.
Right.
It's not me avoiding, it's definitely one of the things we didn't mention, but I feel like it's one of the greatest differences between being neurodivergent and neurotypical is neurodivergent people have an incredibly difficult time of being passive aggressive, because passive aggressive requires unspoken communication and being on the same page with others. So neurotypicals are totally used to passive aggressive behaviors and just being able to interpret the other person's behavior for what it means. But neurotypicals, we don't really do passive aggressive because we don't know. We totally missed it.
Or at least we can be trained, but it's not necessarily instinctive. Because you would need to be able to pay attention to cues and to correctly interpret those cues for passive aggression to work. And I can tell you, I have missed so many passive aggressive things people have tried to aim at me. And it just went right over my head. I was absolutely not noticing it. And so it did not hurt me. It did not wound me. People thought that I was iron shielded versus, no, I'm just neurodivergent and I did pick up on their subtlety. I've literally had people have to tell me point blank, I don't like you. We are not friends. For me to get the hint that they are not my friend. Because I was not picking up on their subtle cues.
Yeah.
But that has actually worked really well for me overall. Is a lot of people, they may put out those really negative, aggressive cues, and I ignore them or I don't even notice them. And then eventually they get used to me and they realize, look, I have a lot of lovely features that I bring to the table. And they eventually fall in love with me. So at a certain point, we can wear down the neurotypicals. It's delightful. As Noah says, if we give up on possibility of a good change, we give up hope for everything.
True. Yep. And I get really frustrated with the narrative of change can't happen because I know what I was like in my teens, 20s, and early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Change can happen.
Yeah. Change is absolutely possible in individuals and in the world. Y'all, Tom and I grew up in a world where people whispered gay and they whispered lesbian, and bisexuals did not exist. And there was nothing beyond those three options. And now we live in a world where most people know about June as Pride Month in America, and they at least know that gay people exist, and they get married and they have kids, or they don't get married and they have kids, or they don't get married and they don't have kids, and they live their life and they find love, and they do not die alone unless that is what they want. All of those things are real. And that lesbians can form communes, and it doesn't mean they're all wives with each other, but maybe it does. And all of the above and everything in the middle and everything between the cracks. But Tom and I grew up, and Charlie too, I'm sure, grew up in a world where this wasn't a thing. And then we also grew up in a time where the gay disease was killing anyone who was gay or associated with gays. We grew up in that. The world has changed. Look, I know it's... I absolutely know. This is still a dystopia. I am not arguing that. But y'all, positive change has happened.
When I was a kid,
happening.
Yeah, when I was a kid, it was not uncommon to hear people use the N-word with the hard R in public in just regular conversation.
Yes, just not even trying to hurt someone right to their face.
Yeah.
but just in conversation as a word, talking about people instead of using other non-hurtful words. Like, it was just normal, and not just in the Deep South or just in the Midwest. It was everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, everywhere people said it. I heard it as a little child in Michigan. I heard it everywhere. And my parents, however, forbid me. There were 2 words I wasn't allowed to say in our home, and it was the N-word and ain't.
Well, nobody likes the Scots.
Eventually, it took me a decade of campaigning, but I got ain't to be allowed. At least my mother would not lose her crap over it.
My problem is people don't use ain't properly.
Right.
Ain't is a contraction of I am not.
So, I mean, but I knew my parents' reasoning for those. They did explain it multiple times to us. But things changed. It's been wonderful. I mean, obviously, we still have far to go. I mean, when people are legislating what autistic people can and can't do, we have far to go. When people are legislating what queer people can and can't do, and what people in general can and cannot wear, we have far to go. But we are getting there. There is hope.
The biggest thing to take away from everything that's going on right now is that while those in power are pushing these horrible, hateful laws, they're not actually driving people to the polls. People are not as invested as they were. I mean, I remember when the Prop 8 fight was happening and all of the early marriage equality stuff was going on. People were going out to vote against queer people.
Yeah.
And that's not happening now because, well, gay marriage happened and the world didn't end, and people are more interested in, why am I not getting paid right?
Right.
Why can't I find a job? That's a little bit more important to me than who Bob is going to bed with.
Mm-hmm.
Or what Bob is wearing in public. And that's a huge change.
Yeah, I agree. What is the humor of neurodivergent folks? Because it's a bonding thing. If we can talk just even among ourselves about these little things. I mean, there's also the how many light bulb thing. And seriously. What was it? My family used to have one. How many glories does it take to change a light bulb? And there were a couple variations over the years, and all of them were accurate. And we just played as a family about that. Not trying to hurt anybody, but just, yeah. You need 1 glory to go find the light bulb, 1 glory to go find the stepladder. Then you need another glory to go in her room and get lost, forgetting what she was supposed to do. And then you need 1 glory to keep all the other glories on track. I think my sister and mom was the one who originally came up with how many glories do you need? And they hadn't finished figuring out the joke when they came to me of, well, okay, this is what we're up to. Have we forgotten anything? They were just giggling. They were so silly. It was funny. It was funny about how many glories does it take to change a light bulb? And I was like, okay, well, how many moms does it take to change a light bulb? Speaking specifically about her mom. And then, my sister just lost it, literally rolling on the ground, laughing of, well, you have to have 1 yell at her children, and you have to have 1 get dinner started, and you have to have 1, get in the car and go to the store to get light bulbs, and so on. She just lost it. So at a certain point, having that fun of playing around with, hence why we like the whole you might be neurodivergent if, and you list these quirks of your family, which quirk is a dog whistle for neurodivergent, y'all, if you have not picked up on that. People use quirky when they don't necessarily feel safe using the word neurodivergent or using autism as a word to describe someone. They'll say quirky. Oh, he's just quirky. Yeah, he real quirky, honey. He's so quirky he could open up a quirk shop.
This might be fun for an episode of Creative Recharge. You might be a writer if.
You might be right.
And give everybody homework and time to pre-write all of their lists so we can come together and share them.
Can you imagine?
You may be a writer if your childhood dream was to open a stationery shop.
You might be a writer if every November you suddenly get a strong urge for enormous quarts of coffee and sandwiches. Like,
You might be a writer if most of your movies you've watched the screenwriter audio track more than the actual film.
oh my God, it's true. Well, Creative Recharge is next. August and September is Creative Recharge.
That's what I was thinking. Like, there might be a really fun way to open Creative Recharge, because
I mean, it's kind of fun,
everybody
right?
why we love to write, you know?
Is write jokes. These sort of Mad Lib style jokes.
Yeah.
As well as kind of poke fun at the things that we know we do and that we know others do that seem like kind of specific. Like, not everyone does it, but only some people do it. You might be a writer if you correct the world building of movies and books. You might be a writer if you bought a book called How I Became a Writer so you could learn their secrets. Yeah, I know. I got to start watching Adventure Time. I couldn't remember which show I was supposed to. I know you sent me the spreadsheet. I have to go find it.
There's a lot of Adventure Time.
Yeah. Thankfully, she sent me a list of the essentials, which is still inappropriately long list.
It's a good show.
I have been fascinated by some of the character arcs.
Oh, yeah.
So, next week, where is the Monday one? Why is this stuff? Where is Monday? I know you're here. Oh, there. It's always right in front of me and I can't put it. What to expect on next Monday's episode. All right, let's see. Where are we? June 12th episode is about small talk. The importance of it, how to give compliments, tell jokes, how to do small talk. Tom, where's your pitch?
What are the many, many uses for small talk? Why it is not pointless the way most people think it is. And why, yeah, I know most neurodivergent people have a real issue with small talk, and I think it's because they don't understand what they're supposed to be doing with it.
Also, they haven't been overtly taught the importance of small talk and how to initiate and maintain small talk with a variety of people, including people who also do not know how to do small talk.
Point of order. Are we going to be including a subsection on schmoozing in the discussion of small talk? Good.
Yeah.
Don't you? I love to schmooze.
Because you got to know
Imagine if schmoozing gives me energy, it must deplete all the introverts in the room.
I actually love schmoozing. Schmoozing and dishing, which are very different kind of subsets of small talk. Girl, learn how to dish and you'll always have friends wherever you are.
Mm-hmm. The small talk is data collection. You are correct. Small talk it's like we're literally going to talk about, among the things, what small talk can teach you about each person. Because it is a socially acceptable, non-aggressive way to really get to understand somebody's personality. There's a lot of very good, important benefits to it, at least for people that you are interested to know better. Whether you need to know them better because you're going to work with them or you already work with them, because you feel romantic about them or want to feel romantic, because they just seem like a nice person and everyone said y'all should be friends, or whether they seem like a terrible person and you're trying to figure out how to figure out your strategies to destroy their lives. I'm not saying I've done that. What are you talking about? I am a lovely person. I'm a sweet baby lamb.
I thought you randomly drew their name out of the hat to get to know them better to destroy their lives.
Oh. That was only once.
There's a lot of benefits to really getting good at small talk.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of important world building, world destroying benefits.
And it's also really helpful because in a way, a lot of the ways certain accounts get popular on social media is because they're good at small talk and they're able to weaponize that to get a conversation started on social media.
Mm-hmm.
It's also important for neurodivergence to understand that, because then once you know what small talk is for, you know how to behave in that situation, and you can relay that important information without having to sit down and hand a list. You can communicate through small talk all the different things, like here's the list of my triggers, and here's a list of things that'll make me happy. And
by the way, Chaos Demon's home.
I'm back.
Hi.
I've been doing stuff
So,
you probably heard.
Yeah, essentially this whole season is based on Tom's notes to himself about what he would want to write essays to explain to his younger self.
Yeah.
And this is one of them, because when he was young, he did not understand the benefits and importance of small talk.
Why do people talk about the weather? And the answer is there is exceptionally good reasons we talk about the weather that you need to do. It is not actually optional the way you may think it is.
Grandma told me that one.
So yeah, like small talk has a lot of benefits, and it has many aspects we think neurodivergent people will be very interested in, and that if they don't already have the skill, that we want to help encourage them by giving them those insider tips so that they can develop this skill, because that's all it is. Small talk is just a skill like any other skill, like cooking or baking or how to deep clean anything. It's a skill, and it is a very useful skill, particularly, I think, for neurodivergent people, since being neurodivergent means other people do not necessarily think like us. So essentially, as a neurodivergent person, it behooves us to always be thinking about how can we develop further allies, both locally and abroad? Because we as neurodivergent people need as many allies as we can get. We need as many people in our corner as possible, because they are not automatically in our corner the way many neurotypical people experience the world. Small talk is one of those ways to find potential allies in a very quick and relatively enjoyable manner. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. I hope you all will come. We would love to see you. And with that, I shall wave you all off and say thank you so much. Good night. Mwah, mwah, mwah.